Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Goldster Inside Story. I'm thrilled this week to be welcoming all the way from Vienna, Judith Grohmann, who's the author of this lovely new book. Can you see this? The Real Mozart, the Original King of Pop. I really like that subtitle there. Judith, welcome. Grüß Gott.
Grüß
Welcome.
Gott, hallo Lucinda.
Welcome to Goldster. It's lovely to have you on board. Now, I've never met Judith before, but we have been connected on Twitter for quite a time because we have a lot of interests in common and write about write historic biography. So I was thrilled when her new book came out to be able to ask Judith to come and join us. So tell us, Judith, who was the real Mozart?
Thank you for having me first.
You're very welcome.
Well, the real Mozart was a very interesting, very young Austrian composer. And I would say nowadays he would be showered with Grammys and the best prizes ever. At the time, it was a little bit different.
And what was it like for him growing up? I mean, we all know that he was this kind of child prodigy. We hear all these amazing stories, but
Yes.
what was it like for him? What was his kind of everyday, day-to-day life?
Well, he was extremely focused on his music because he had a dad who was a very honorable man coming from Germany and who lived in Salzburg. I suppose you know Salzburg and the Salzburg Festival.
We all know Salzburg,
very well
Sound of
known.
Music. I hate to tell you.
Yeah, and he loved Salzburg. He studied there. He studied law. And then he met his love of his life, Maria Anna Pertl, and they married, and they were the best couple ever. So, and then they got children, and one of them was no, it was not Constanze, what am I telling? One of them was a Mozart, and yeah, he grew up with that. His dad was working in the music industry. He wrote a very special book about violinists. And this book is still sold and is still one of the best masterpieces he did. So,
wow,
interesting story.
So, do you have a musical background? Is that how you became interested in him?
Well, what is interesting is that I grew up with Mozart. You know, when you live in Austria, you grow up with music because we are the country of musicians. Yes. And I grew up with a magic flute. That was my first Mozart, and I loved him. And then I had the chance, you will not believe it, but you know, the publishing house I wrote the book for, Pen and Sword, and they asked me to write a book about Mozart, and I said, why not? Yes, I do it.
And so I know I lived in Vienna as a teenager, and I'm not musical at all, but you cannot escape Mozart in Vienna.
No.
It's just extraordinary, and you know the gorgeous statue of him, and everywhere you go there. And I also, that the first opera I saw was the Magic Flute. I just thought it was wonderful. In Vienna, I'd never been to an opera before, and I thought it was extraordinary. And he really is somebody who, even today, I think, can be related to. What is it about him, you think, that makes him kind of modern, that made you call him the original king of pop?
It's his music, it's the sound, it's the vibrance, it's everything what he did, and the operas you can see at the Vienna Opera House are incredible, and people love that, and yeah.
And the pride that people in Vienna take in Mozart, why do you think that's still so relevant today? It's a city of musicians, as you said, and yet there is Mozart who stands out above them all still.
Yeah, we have Haydn, we have Beethoven, we have Donizetti, Verdi, everybody, but Mozart is the one who is the constance. No? And we love this sound, and the stories are funny. You can go to a Mozart opera with your children, you can go with your wife, your girlfriend, you can go with your parents. So it's a music for all ages, I would say.
I think that's very true. There is that constant appeal, and I may be wrong, but I don't think the others have had a chocolate named after them, have they?
Yeah, that's true. It still exists. And one of the best one is made in Salzburg. There's a
Uh-huh.
family with the name of Fürst, and you can buy these chocolates. I have also a picture in my book, by the
Yeah.
way, because the publishing house asked me for that, and we did it. Yeah.
Well, I remember in Vienna, they're called Mozartkugel, and they are kind of
Yes.
marzipan with chocolate. And just to say to everybody here that they wanted to market them in the English-speaking world, and they suggested that they should do a direct translation, which is Mozart's balls, and it didn't go down very well. They had to keep calling them Mozartkugels, and that just makes me laugh whenever I see them because I think that's hilarious. That obviously
Yeah.
two meanings
But
in
they are
English.
good. I suppose you tasted them and they are good.
They're delicious. They're lovely.
Yes.
I think Mozart spheres would have been the best translation they could have done. Gita likes that one. We've had a little giggle there in the chat. Please do remember, everybody, that you are welcome to put anything into the chat. Those of you who are joining live today, if you have any memories of Mozart yourself, if you're musical, and of course, if you've been to Vienna and you want to share that love of the city, which both Judith and I love. It's a gorgeous
Yes.
city. It's very close to my heart. So tell us about Mozart. Okay, the little boy growing up. When did they first realize how musical he was, and how did that start to
He was
manifest
very,
itself?
very young. He started at the age of 2, 3. He followed his father, in fact, and his sister. And when the family moved, the father always went to concerts, and then he played, and the children were with him, and they were also doing music. And it started very soon, and it was quite of normal for the whole family. So
Yeah. That's the thing, isn't it? It's that normality. It's the fact that for him, we think of him as being,
yes.
this prodigy, but actually, well, it was just for him that was just as simple as breathing, really. I mean, he grew up in a musical family, as you say, and there
Mm.
he was just able to do these things which we consider extraordinary. When did he start to realize that maybe there was something a bit unusual in his ability, do you think?
That's not so easy to say, but I think he lived in this musical family where the father was an icon, let's say it, for the time, of course, and the mother also loved music, and it was quite of normal for them. So I don't think that they had to realize it. It was like, I don't know, eating a sandwich every day, or for them, yeah, really, for them it was normality.
Yeah. And tell us about how how he composed, how he performed, how many hours a day were devoted to his music?
Oh, for him, it was quite of the whole day was music. He went up and then he did a little bit of piano, and then he composed, and then he was thinking. It was once his sister always also said that she could not stop him. And by
Yeah.
night, he was also composing. So it was kind of his life. Hmm?
Yeah.
It's like for us writing, I
Yeah.
suppose, huh?
It's
It's for
something
me,
that you
it's like
do.
that.
Yeah.
So for him, it was making music.
And how much was he appreciated in his own lifetime? You say today he would get Grammys and things. What did people
Yes, and he had a lot of fans. You know, they were going with his father. They were going on tour. So they did not stay in Salzburg in Austria. They went to Germany, they went to Italy, to France, to England, which he loved very, very much. You can read that in the book, the details. And for him, he was like a superstar singer of our time, like the Adele, if you like. Hmm?
Yeah, I love,
So
and we look at this image of him, and this is, and I don't know if this is a really, accurate portrait, but he looks like a
uh,
very handsome young man. Was that referred to in his lifetime? Was he kind
yeah, yeah, and I would like to say at this time that this picture has been made by my best friend, who
of,
is a French, who was diplomat and who started to paint. And we said we don't want to have the usual cover. And she said, "Wait, I'm gonna do something," and she painted that. And I think it's quite realistic what she did.
I think it's very beautiful compared to the kind of portraits of the time I've seen. I think that's
Yeah,
really
that
lovely. And I love
everybody
this little
knows. Huh?
detail on the back.
Yeah,
Very
that's
lovely
very
book
sweet,
blanket.
the piano. Yeah.
And he does. He looks like a handsome young man. It looks like he could be somebody in a band today.
Yes, he looks into your eyes. And
Yeah.
it's a great picture she did. Yeah.
So when you started to research him, where did you begin your research?
That's a very good idea. Well, I started to contact immediately, the journalist focused. I started to contact immediately the musicologists here in Vienna, of course.
Yes.
And we have a very good man who is specialized on Mozart. It's Professor Gruber, and I would like to thank him here if he listens to the help he gave me. And then, of course, I called the Stiftung Mozarteum, which is in Salzburg, and which is a foundation made for Mozart. And I talk.
Yeah, sorry. And so how long did this take you? How long did you have to research the book?
I worked for a year. It's always the same thing. If you do a book, it's always a year.
That's
Yeah.
that's
I
so
had to
quick.
read several books too, because Stiftung Mozarteum told me, listen, you have to read some British authors, etc. And then I got a picture, and then I had to write the details by myself. So of course, yeah.
Yeah. So that was really intense, having just a
Yes.
year to research and write this. So after you researched in Salzburg, did you then go to the Mozart house in Vienna as well?
Of course,
Yeah.
these were very nice, and you have to visit it if you listen to this
I'm just
interview.
going to put a link in the chat actually, but for anybody
Yes,
listening on the podcast, you can just look up on a search engine Mozart house in Vienna.
and the team of the Mozart House, they are so adorable. They helped me a lot. So we visited all the rooms, and they explained to me what happened in these rooms, and then we talked a lot, and it was a great fun, and they were really enthusiastic about the book. Now they have it. They are completely yippee, and yeah.
Wonderful. That's really exciting.
Oh, it's good
So have
because
you been to do a signing at the Mozart house in Vienna?
yes, of course, I would love to do that. Yeah, sure. And there are many tourists coming now for the Easter holidays, and
Yes.
I think that's a good thing. And people speak English, and that's very important to have English books also at the Mozart
Yeah.
house.
Well, I find, I mean, when I go to Vienna and I try and bring back my rusty German and everybody just speaks perfect English.
Oh, thank you. We try
No,
our best.
it's very hard to actually get the chance to speak German at all. I realized what a very strong Viennese accent I must have, though. A few years ago, I was on the tube in London, and there was a German family, and surprisingly for young Germans, this young couple with their children, they didn't seem to speak any English, and they got completely lost. And I dragged up my German from a very long time ago, knowing that I was getting all the tenses and everything wrong. But I managed to help them find their way, and then they said, "Oh, you're from Vienna," and I thought, "Wow, do you really think Viennese people speak German this badly?" But you must have a very strong Viennese accent, which I never knew I had.
So your German must be very, very good. Let's say that, huh?
It's very bad now, but it was funny.
Lucinda, come on.
But there is something about Vienna, and we've had a few comments in the chat as well, which is lovely.
Yes.
Vienna is a beautiful city to visit. I particularly enjoyed visiting the Schönbrunn Palace. Oh,
Yes.
you haven't ever been to Vienna, I can thoroughly recommend that. Now, we have a comment here as well. I never liked the Mozart Kugels, but then I don't like marzipan. I lived in München for 10 years, and I visited Salzburg often and Vienna. My parents both loved classical music, so Mozart and music were always in the house, although my father was the only one who could make music. Well, now I wonder, Lilette, whether you didn't inherit that musical ability, but yeah. Wonderful. So we've got a question here for you. Was there much sibling rivalry because of Mozart's success?
Well, the problem is that his sister, Maria Anna, was a woman at the time, and women at the time didn't have the same chances as we have now. And so she loved music, and she loved what her father did, and she also wanted to become an artist, but this was not possible at the time.
Yeah.
So it was only for Mozart and for Wolfgang Amadeus, as I say in my book, because in my book I don't call him Mozart, I call him Wolfgang Amadeus, which were his first names.
All called Mozart.
Yeah.
So tell us about her. Tell us about his sister. What was she like? What did you find when you were researching his life?
Well, she was a very nice lady, but the problem is most of the people don't write so much about her, because she traveled with her father and her brother and her mother, and they did the music, but she didn't make the career, so she married, and then this was it. And it's
so,
really sad for us nowadays,
yeah,
because as women, we all work and we have
yeah.
the chance to do anything, but at the time it was different.
So you had the same experience that I've had researching female artists, is that women get lost in history. People
Yes,
don't keep the things they write, even if they're prolific writers. A lot of them, they might write copious letters, but perhaps the people they were written to didn't think they were worth keeping. It's
it's true.
really frustrating when, as you know, researching history, how often women and people of color are silenced by the fact that people didn't think their lives worth recording at the time. And this is, I'm sure you've found as well in your research how much that can happen.
Yes, that's true. And it's sad for us now, but at the time it was completely normal. They
Yeah,
were here to marry, to get children, and this was it.
yeah. And then if their children were prodigies, then they might be remembered as being the mother of.
Yes, yes, but yeah, not everybody can be a prodigy.
No, exactly.
That's a
I walked past
problem.
a grave the other day, and it actually said on it, it just said, the grave was to the loving wife and mother of, and then it was the name of the son. And the woman who was in the grave, her name is not even recorded on the gravestone.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, the arrogance of her son. He might have called her a loving mother, but he didn't actually put her name on it. So no, I don't know who's buried in that grave. And that to me was so resonant with researching history. Have you found this with your other books as well? Is this something you've come across before?
The problem with, for example, books like Mozart is that you cannot interview people who are still alive. And for me, that's a big problem, because
Yeah.
I always want to be extremely near to the reality, you know.
Yes.
In that case, it's impossible. So you have the musicologists, but yeah, this is it. And you have a lot of books, because of course Mozart is so prominent that it's like your family, Lucinda, let's say that.
Yes.
And it's not very easy to do that, but I try to do my best. And I don't know what you have read the book, so
Oh yeah,
you
no,
can
it's
say,
very
is
good.
it okay or?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I
Mhm.
think, I'm really interested because you've written this historic book, and
Yes,
your earlier books have been very much placed in the present. So I want to go forward to that a little bit now,
yes,
because you just mentioned exactly that thing about not being able to interview anybody who's alive who knew Mozart. And of
ex-
course, your other ones are completely different, which to me is fascinating because I haven't written anything that's based about somebody living in the present day. So we're not going to know much about this in the UK, but tell us, in autumn 2019, you produced the official biography of the
yes,
Austrian Chancellor, Sebastian Kurz.
yes.
Tell us about him. Who is Sebastian Kurz, and why did you feel that you wanted to write this biography? Did he come to you to ask you? Did you approach him?
I approached him because I'm, as a journalist, you have to be interested in people and in situations. And for me, it was extremely interesting to have a politician of his age.
And what
Uh,
is his age?
well, now he is 36 years,
Right.
but he started as chancellor at the age of 31 years. So he was the youngest chancellor worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
And I met him before, of course, but for me it was interesting to see how far he will go as a politician, how he is as a politician, and how he deals with other politicians and in the world. And you might remember that he was very appreciated in all the countries. He was always very welcome and yeah, an interesting personality. And that was the reason why I wrote the book.
So a very, very different process from researching the book on
Yes,
Mozart.
of course.
How did you go about writing this one? Was it all
Oh,
recording interviews with people and transcribing them? What was your
yes.
process with it?
I interviewed I interviewed 40 people, 40 people from other countries, of course, not only from Austria. And I wanted to have as much as feedback from other people as possible. And then I read a lot of articles, of course, because you have to be, and then you follow, of course, the current politics. And yeah, and it was a mixture. And I talked, of course, also to him, of course. And yeah, and it took me also more than a year to do this book. And it was very interesting for me to do a political book for the first time, a real political book that many people are interested to read.
And
Would,
what did he feel about it? Was he flattered? Was he a bit nervous? How was it
no,
to interview him?
no, you know, he's cool. To
Mhm.
know Sebastian Kurz, he's a young man. He's extremely cool. He's very authentic. So he's not doing a comedy to impress journalists. That's not his style. He is who he is, and he gives you the answers. And he doesn't lie. He didn't lie to me, you know. And it was a normal process, and enjoyed it very, very much, because we were several times in touch, and it was always very interesting to hear what he says.
And did he kind of read the manuscript very
Of
carefully?
course.
Did you have to kind of have security people reading it? Was there any?
Security people is a good. No, he has a team, and his team read the book, and he also read the book. And we did, as you can see behind me, we did a special cover picture for this book.
Yeah.
This was made in a palace in Vienna.
Hmm.
And I was there for the photo shooting, and everybody was there with their hearts, and they were extremely positive to do this book. And yeah, I did my best, and I think people should be interested in politics, a little
Yeah.
bit more in politics, and that's why I did it.
And what was the reaction like to this book? Because it's an interesting one to have an
Haha.
official biography of someone who's in power at that time. What was
Yes, you know, people said that there is the one category who says, wow, I'm interested in politics, I will read it. And then there is the other part who says, what did she do here? And, you know, you are between these two always. And you don't have to be impressed by the naysayers. That's uninteresting for me. I didn't do the book for naysayers. I did the book for people who are interested. That's all.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Did you find that your opinion of Sebastian Kurz changed while you were writing the book? Did you have a huge idea of what he was like beforehand? Did you have any surprises?
Surprises? No, absolutely not. I met his family. I met his team, because they are also involved and interviewed in the book. I talked to journalists, also journalists from England and Germany, and no, I was not shocked. I didn't know it was a normal thing, in fact. You know, yeah, as he's a very sympathetic guy, and has a nice family, nice team. So everything was kind of perfect.
So a little bit different to your previous one. They're
Of
fascinatingly titled
course,
Fighting the War on Terror.
yes.
Tell us about this one.
Well, that was also one of my ideas. I wanted to meet these counter-terrorist units, because I watched a movie with Samuel Jackson and Kevin Spacey at the time, at the end of the 90s. And I said to myself, I only know policemen, but I didn't know the counter-terrorist units. And one day I got the possibility to meet the Austrian unit. And then I said to them, listen, I would like to do a book about your work. And they said, forget it. You cannot
Mm.
do it. That's
I
why
wondered.
I said, not with me. And for many months, I called them, and we met, and it was all fun. And then suddenly they said, okay, we have understood you want to do that. You're a serious person. Write us a concept, and then we will talk to our colleagues in the other countries. And that's what they did. And they came back and they said, okay, we have some colleagues. So at the time it was 6 colleagues from other countries who would like to work with you and make the book possible. And then I started, and then at the end, we were 16, it was 16 countries and 16 units, which was incredible.
And
And
it
I met them in
included
person.
Israel, Russia. I mean,
Yes,
tell us about all of it. This is fascinating to me.
yes. It was, to say the truth, it was one of the most fascinating things I ever did, because I met these people and I stayed several days with them, and they told me what they experienced, what happens in a unit, and how it works, and their operations, their most spectacular operations.
And
And
what
yeah,
was the response to the book like? I mean, was journalistic response
incredible.
interesting?
I still meet members of the Austrian unit when I go to the chancellery, wherever, if they're, yeah, when guests from other countries come and they have to be there to protect them. And once I talked to one this February, and he said to me, I read your book. I know your book. And I said, wow, super. Our unit knows my book, but yeah, I'm very happy about that, because I'm still in touch with units in other countries, and that's great. And the experience I had was enormous. We did a presentation in Brussels at the EU Parliament for this book in 2016, I think. That was
Wow,
great.
that's amazing.
Yes, and I came to London to do a presentation, but you were not there because
No,
I invited
I
you.
was away. You did invite me, and I was
Yes.
away. So tell us about your career before you started writing books, because you've got a long career in journalism and in
Yes, that's
lecturing.
true.
So tell us about this kind of how you ended up becoming an author. What was your career journey like?
Um, I started to write as a journalist at the age of 18, let's say, because I had the chance to work for the summer holidays, July and August, for one of our political magazines. And my father told me, you know, you are going to serve coffee in these 2 months to the journalists, and this is it. But it turned out in the first week that I had to write an article. And so I wrote my first article, and it was like that. And after these 2 months, the redactor in chief came to me and said, would you like to continue to work for us and to work at yeah, and I said yes, and that was the beginning of my journey. And I started to study, and on the other hand, I wrote articles, or I helped in the redaction, and also at the during the producing of the magazine, I helped and I read all the articles and corrected and whatever. So it was very interesting for me.
And you speak several languages. You're trilingual, is that correct?
Yes, I went to the French lycée, to the French school in
Yeah.
Vienna, and so I'm fluent in French.
And so
And
do you find that as a journalist that has helped you? Have you been able to pick up on
yes,
stories that other
especially when
people?
I had to interview French people who
Yeah.
are working in Austria as CEO from companies. It was very helpful, because the press spokesperson only spoke German. And we started to talk in French, and they were extremely happy, because, you know, the French adore it when somebody speaks their language.
Yeah. Yeah.
And English also always very helpful.
So you can really get an edge that other journalists can't necessarily get.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
And I read that your father was a psychologist, is that
Yes,
correct?
that's true.
How do you think, did that have an influence on you when you were deciding on your career? I mean, did you grow
Yes,
up
because
analyzing everything?
I talked a lot with my father when I was still at school. And when I became journalist, I always tried to do a little analysis of the person I interviewed. That's maybe typical for me. And yeah, and I also did that when I did my book about Mozart. I also did it when I did my book about the units and the work of the counter-terrorist units. So it's always a little bit of psychology.
So going back to Mozart, tell us when you were analyzing him, and what did you think about him as a subject? I mean, did you start with one opinion, change that while you were writing it? Did your opinion change of him at all?
Yes, my opinion changed when I did my researches, because I saw that he was extremely he wanted to have a career path, in fact, and he was interested in being an artist, earning money for him and his family, but also to continue to impress his fans, which is completely normal when we look now at all the singers we know and we appreciate. It's the same thing, I
Yeah.
would say. But it was only another time, a more difficult time. He didn't have a computer or a mobile phone or whatever. So no TikTok, no Twitter, no Facebook, no Instagram, but he did it his way. And he had a lot of people who loved him, who were his fans, and who didn't want to miss a concert of him. So it's kind of the same thing as now,
Yeah.
in fact.
This fervor that was around him. Have you seen the film Amadeus?
Of course,
So,
Milos Forman.
so what do you think about Amadeus? How accurate do you think this portrayal is?
No, it was a movie, so he was described as being a little bit crazy, but for the time, he was not crazy. He was an artist, a simple artist. I mean, not a simple artist, but
Yes.
an artist.
And what about the relationship between him and Salieri?
You all believe that Salieri killed him. No, that's not true.
I thought you might say that.
No, I found out that Salieri admired him and went to his concerts to be there and to listen. That was his thing. So
You were able to explode that myth.
yes, it's a little bit more different in the reality than in the
Of
movie
course.
industry.
I just know that that's how most people here will have known of Mozart, and I really wanted to talk about the fact that Amadeus is not actually a biopic.
Yeah.
I love it. It's a great film, but I think that's
Yes.
people here have this opinion of Mozart comes from that film, which I thought was a beautifully acted film. So we have a couple of comments and questions in the chat.
Yes.
We have, Alice says, my love for classical music started from listening to Mozart. As far as I know, his father was very cruel to Wolfgang, and he forced his son to play for hours until the child lost his consciousness. What striking facts did you find while doing Mozart biographical research?
No, that's true. You know what? There was a time when Mozart loved to travel with his dad to different countries and to show up and to make music with him. But then there came a time when he said, enough is enough. I want to have my career. I want to do it my way. I don't want to have a job in Salzburg. I want to go to Vienna. And that's what he did. And in Vienna, he was on his own. And that was very good for him to get his contacts and not always to have the contacts that the dad.
So his father was extremely controlling. And
yes.
How did you feel about his father when you were researching it?
A very interesting man, but also, in my opinion, a very difficult man, because he was like a mother protecting his son, and his son had to do what he wanted to do. And Mozart didn't want that, in fact, in reality.
Yeah. So we have another comment here. I absolutely love Austria. The Mozart house in Vienna and his birth house in Salzburg are well worth visiting. His life ended far too soon.
Great.
Agree with that. And we have a very interesting, bit of a spiritual, spooky question here. Okay, what are your feelings about child prodigies being the reincarnations of gifted and talented people?
Possible.
So really, Mozart could have
possible. Why not?
Maybe Harry Styles is Mozart today, or
yeah, something like that. Harry Styles, good idea. Yeah, that's true.
But I wonder who Mozart's reincarnation could have been. So, who Mozart was the reincarnation of, I should say.
Yes.
Now, I wondered, when you were doing this research, was there anything that really shocked or surprised you, or any kind of interesting things that you'd had no idea you would come across when you were doing this research?
Well, the question is very good. Sometimes when I read some books, I said to myself, the interpretation goes very far from certain musicologists.
Yes.
You know, they interpret and interpret and interpret, and then they say, no, this could not be. But at the end, no, I said to myself, you have to focus on the time. And the 18th century is different than now. So when you can approach this 18th century, and when you understand what happens at the time, then you can write this book, in my opinion.
It's absolutely true. And it's so easy now. We're very used to the kind of cancel culture idea. I don't know if you know that expression.
Yes.
And the fact that, everything has to be seen through very 21st century eyes,
Yes.
and people get really cross about behavior of people in the past. How much did you come across that when you were writing it? Were there things that you felt people would criticize, things that you were rather nervous of putting into the book, or did you just think, I can't?
Absolutely not. I'm never nervous to put something in my
Good.
Come on, Lucinda. No. I try to do my analysis of the facts in the way that I work as a journalist, let's say. And I'm never afraid of putting whatever in the book. And you can read in the chapters, for example, about his death. You have to read that, because if you ask me to explain how did he die, no, read it.
So everyone has to buy this book. That's what you're saying. I've put the link in the chat.
Yes.
I was going to ask you about his death, so that's that question. We have a comment here for anyone who's interested in Amadeus, that the National Theatre Online has the play Amadeus available, and it is excellent. Thank you for that. And we have a question about one of your other books. So Denise wants to know, when did your interest in terrorism start?
With the book, with the movie that I saw, and I said to myself, incredible that there are guys who can upside down from buildings. That impressed me the most, from skyscrapers in this case, because the movie is The Negotiator, that I saw. And I dedicated also the book, to be honest, to Kevin Spacey, because he was the negotiator at the time. And then I had this in my mind, but I had to meet the Austrian unit, and then everything got into pieces, and I could write the book. And when I met them, it was incredible meetings.
Yeah.
Because they showed me everything,
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's the thing. And especially, I have to say, and to be honest, the British unit was one of the best units.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yes.
And they gave you access to information, which is really, really intriguing that they were willing to give access to information for a book.
Yes, because they saw the Austrians are in the book project, and then they said, okay, because they adored the Austrians, and they said, okay, if the Austrians are in this book, we will do it too. And at the end, as I said, 16 units were there, so that's quite a thing.
And did you have to have all sorts of special clearance, or did you have to sign forms of kind of Official Secrets Act type?
I think there were some clearances that I don't know, but no, I had one of the persons from the Austrian Ministry of Internal Affairs who supervised that, and I got one contact after the other one, but I know now that they called each other and they said, how is she? And they said, no, it was brilliant, it was fun, and that's how it worked.
And so with this book, you got to travel, as you say, you came over to England, you went to Brussels.
Several times to England.
Yeah. Are you still invited to give talks on it? Are people still interested in this, or does it feel as if everything's moved on a bit?
No, people are still interested, but when I write books, I always have one topic, and then I pass to the next topic, because that's what my journalistic mentor told me. You have to be interested in many things, not only in one thing, And I met a new unit last year, and that was also very, very funny. So there's still a little bit the topic of counterterrorism, but I move forward,
Yeah.
Mm.
So what are you working on now? Are you allowed to tell us?
Haha. Well, currently I have finished a thriller.
So
Because
you're
I
writing
think, and
fiction now.
also the British unit was the one who said to me, Judith, after this book, you have to write a thriller. And I kept it in mind, and I finished something, and let's see.
And how was the process? How did you find it differing between non-fiction and fiction? The
Pah!
writing process.
It's more difficult, I must say.
More difficult to write fiction.
Yes.
And why do you think that is?
In my brain, I don't know where it comes, but no, I was working. I have to say, for a thriller, I work with people from the Ministry of Internal Affairs that I have met, who helped me a little bit, and the Ministry of Defense too. And yeah, and for the rest, it's my imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. We've been asked, can you tell us the plot? I'm not going to ask you that question. Sorry,
No,
Peter.
no, 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 no,
No,
no,
you
no,
can't.
no,
You
no.
can't ask a writer to tell you the plot of the thriller.
It's something
Not published yet. No.
incredible, the plot.
Don't give away your secrets there, Judith.
No, 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 no.
So
No
we have
secrets.
we have quite a lot of aspiring writers here with the Goldster members.
Ah, cool.
What are your tips for anybody who's getting into writing for the first time? Because you've worked as a journalist, you've written non-fiction, and now you're writing fiction. So it's an excellent way of talking to somebody who's done lots of different things. What are your tips for those who are just beginning on their journey?
Go out, meet a lot of people, talk to a lot of people, read a lot. Very important to read a lot, which is, to be honest, not the case in Austria. The Austrians don't read a lot, but the French people read a lot. I don't know, did
That's
you?
interesting. That's very
Yeah, that's
interesting.
very interesting.
I wonder why that is, because there's lots of beautiful bookshops in Austria, but obviously
Yes, that's true, but
it's a
for
small part
example,
of the population buying them.
yeah, they buy it for Christmas time or for the
Hmm.
Easter time when they have to give gifts or for birthdays.
Yeah.
But in France, you read one book per week, at least. I
Hmm.
don't know, in England, is it the same?
There's a pretty good reading population
Yes.
here. Yes. I mean, I don't know what the figures are in comparison, but I
Mm.
think particularly since the pandemic, I think, and I don't know if anybody here who's watching has got the same opinion, but I think that bookshops have really started to do a little bit better because people got really into reading again in lockdown. And quite a lot of people said that it kind of sparked their interest again in reading. They hadn't had time to read beforehand. And I hope that that will continue now, because I think that it's been quite lovely to see how much more interested people have been in books and literature. At least, maybe I'm in an echo chamber, but at least amongst people that I know who've really
Yeah,
enjoyed getting back into their reading.
yeah.
I'd love to
So
hear your thoughts on that, everybody, as well. If you find that your reading habits have changed, I do feel the other side of that coin is that younger people have a much shorter attention span, and we know this is true from kind of studies that have been done, and perhaps that's going to have an impact on book buying and reading. Who knows?
yes, I suppose they also buy audiobooks. That's what they
Yes.
like. Huh?
Yeah, and that to me, I think audiobooks are fantastic. And I know we've had this discussion with Goldster members when we do our book of the month. Every month we have a group chat where it's not recorded and people talk about books. And I know that people have said audiobooks have been interesting. We have a comment here. I read at the very least a book a week, and I always have. So that's why they're coming along to Inside Story. So tell us about your own writing routine when you're on a book deadline. I mean, obviously you've got the research
Yes,
to get done. When you're actually physically writing the book, what is
yes.
your daily routine?
Well, I go up and tuck. I'm in front of my computer, my Apple, I have to say that. And yeah, and then I'm writing, writing, writing. It's like a journalist, you know, you're always sitting in front of this machine and you have to, vroom, and that's it.
And how do you find you have to get up and do exercise? How do you keep yourself healthy? Because it is not a good thing
No,
to be sitting in front of a computer all the time. So what are your tips?
yeah, I'm working. I'm running around in my apartment, but yeah, and then I go out and run around a little bit. But I should do a lot more workout these days.
Well, you need to join Goldster and do the exercise classes online because they are fab.
Okay.
They have
I
golf,
will
they
do
have
that.
yoga, Pilates, all sorts of wonderful things.
Pilates
Tai
on
Chi.
Goldster. Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, I will have a look.
We have a comment here. Life wouldn't be complete without a good book to read. Oh, Monique, I'm so with you on that one.
That's true.
Absolutely agree. I'd say without a whole pile of books waiting to be read and several being read at the same time.
Yeah.
So, um, just to round up here, really, before I tell everyone what's coming up on Goldster, why do you think people should read your book? Not just because you want them to buy it, but what is it about Mozart that you think is going to speak to them and that they should discover about this extraordinary man, who I think is a really extraordinary individual?
I think for all those who love his music, it could be interesting to read the book and to learn a little bit more about him, about his Freemasonry thing and his family and his travels, his trips, his problems with his wife, Constanze. I have put some letters in the book which have been very appreciated because they are the original letters that he wrote. And it's maybe also interesting to see him writing something.
And could you tell us a little bit, for those who haven't read the book yet, could you tell us a little bit about those letters and what made them so interesting to you?
Because he had a very special speech also in these letters, because he was not always very charming, but something, let's say, maybe he had a certain vulgarity that nobody would expect to have him. And you discover a lot of things in these letters. That's what I say. You have to read that.
So we've got another comment here from Jean. I always have to have a book ready to read when I finish my current one.
Well, then Mozart.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell everybody what is coming up on Goldster. So for those of you who come along to our book of the month, just to say that this month, as you all know, we had quite a long discussion about what this was going to be, and the winner was Franz Kafka, Metamorphosis. However, there were also a lot of votes for the Richard Osman book. We like to be very eclectic here on Goldster. So that will be something that we will do later in the year, perhaps next month. But thank you so much for those of you who joined in. Now, tomorrow I am doing, it's also music, but it's a very, very different type of music. I am interviewing a couple called Paul Cronell and Sarah Louise Young, and they are performers. They're absolutely fascinating. They're lovely, very bubbly, fun couple. And she is currently constantly on tour. She's in Paris today, getting back on time
Wow, cool.
Goldster tomorrow, because she does a Kate Bush tribute show. And as you may know, since Stranger Things has been on Netflix, Kate Bush has suddenly gone absolutely crazy again. Well, this couple, they decided that they were going to look back at during their youth, this nostalgia for the magazine of their youth, Smash Hits magazine. I'm sure many of you remember this. And they looked back to the 1980s. 24 young people from around the world had their RSVP pen pal requests and their full postal addresses published in the best-selling music magazine of the day, Smash Hits. And then 35 years later, they decided to reply to all of them because they had their addresses still in there. And they reunited them with their pen pals that they had been looking for as teenagers. It's a really fun story. And it's also just great to hear these two really consummate performers talk about what it's like to be a performer. So they're going to be on tomorrow with me. And then next week, Humphrey is back on Thursday, and he is talking to Monique Roffey. She's the author of The Mermaid of Black Conch, which is, she's a writer, lecturer, and professor of contemporary fiction. And she's written this rather remarkable book, which has just, it won the 2020 Costa Book of the Year award. And it's a really extraordinary book. She also teaches creative writing. And then I'm back again on Friday the 14th with another beautiful book, a memoir written by Alexis Keir, and it's his first book. It's called Windward Family, an Atlas of Love, Loss and Belonging. And it explores the lives of people who've travelled over several generations from the Caribbean island of St. Vincent to England. And it was just published in February of this year. Now, Alexis's parents came from St. Vincent to the UK in the 1960s, and he and his siblings lived in St. Vincent for a while, as well as growing up in England. It's a really beautifully written book, and I hope that you'll join me for that as well. And I'm back on Tuesday as well next week on PPG, our sister show, Purpose, Passion, Grit. And I do hope you'll come and join us for this, because I'm talking to a really remarkable woman, and she is a singer-songwriter. She's got a new album coming out in a few months' time. She's released a few singles. It's her first debut solo album, but it's not her first album. She's worked with lots of other artists. She's called Zan Tyler, and she was signed by Creation Records at the same time when Oasis was around, and she's done all sorts of amazing live performances. She's going to be talking about what it's like to be a woman in the music industry, as well as the inspiration behind writing her music. This particular album was inspired by all sorts of female empowerment. It's a really interesting concept, and I do hope you'll join us for that. We've got a couple of comments from people saying how much they've enjoyed it, so thank you so much,
thank you,
Judith, for coming along today. Really looking forward to seeing what you come up with next. I'm looking forward to finding out about the thriller, and I do hope that in the future you'll come back and talk to us about what it's like writing fiction. So take care, everybody. Have a lovely weekend. And for those of you who are celebrating, do enjoy Easter this weekend and whatever else you're celebrating. Take care, everybody. And remember that if you're finding Easter is a time when you're not seeing lots of people and you're at home, if you're perhaps on your own, there are all sorts of things happening on Goldster. And of course, our class recordings are on there. So whatever you're doing this weekend, Goldster is with you if you need us. Take care, everybody. Lovely to see you, Judith, and I hope we see you in person.
Thank you for having me.
Take care. Oh, we have here Happy Easter and Frohe Ostern.
Happy Easter.
Well done. Oh, we've got a couple of bilingual people here.
Very good.
Take care, everybody. And Judith and I will now turn off our videos, but we hope to see you very soon.
Thank you so much, Lucinda. You are great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.